ready, one Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here to do a review of Barbara Pym's novel from 1958, A Glass of Blessings. This is her fifth novel, and it happens to be the fifth novel of hers I've read. Yes, I am reading the novels of Barbara Pym in sequence. Not in sequence, that's a different video series. Please stand by. I'm enjoying her novels so much. They were first recommended to me on the Reader's Podcast by Thomas. I've spent a very satisfying maybe year and a bit reading the first 5 and hope maybe we'll finish up the series. We'll definitely finish up the series at some point and may finish it up next year. So, Barbara Pym. Her writing career lasted from 1950 until her death in, I think, 1980, with a long break. There's one more novel. The next novel came out in 1961, No Fond Return of Love, so that'll be the first one I start in the new year. And after that, her publishers dropped her very rudely and just said, "Your novels are not modern enough for our readership, so please go away." And it was almost that rude. So she did. She never stopped writing, but she wasn't published again until 1977. She had a comeback, kind of like she's the Tina Turner of British literature. I love her sensibility. She never married, had lots of lovers, had an office job at an anthropology institute in London her whole writing career. Was a church-going lady, but certainly appreciated sacrilegious humor. And many of her characters are agnostic or atheist and very well drawn. So she's not. These aren't churchy books, but a lot of the action, such as it is, happens in churches, bake sales, homes, and offices. Some of her novels show working women, which I enjoy. A typical Barbara Pym heroine is a spinster, not beautiful, and a little eccentric. And she does those protagonists so well. Her first book, Some Tame Gazelle, was 2 unmarried sisters living together across from the church and in a little town. Her characters have romantic fantasies that are poignant and laughable at the same time. And these ladies in Some Tame Gazelle were... One of them had never stopped carrying a torch for the archdeacon in the town, who she had dated briefly 35 years ago, and is now very happily married, or at least very married, and she's never let go of her fantasies about him. And the other one, every new man that passes her by, she thinks maybe this is the one. And I felt compassion and chortled both, and Barbara Pym leaves room in her novels for both reactions to her characters, and that's what I love. These novels are not plot-driven. There isn't a lot that happens. It's a small canvas. It's kind of a Jane Austen novel of the 1950s, but how she plays with the marriage plot is interesting, because none of her novels so far have ended in marriage. So there's that. Very few of her characters are married. There's something Austenian about the narrative energies that circulate in her novels. So I just love them. But to put it as succinctly as Sean the Book Maniac is capable of being succinct about anything, a Barbara Pym novel creates hilarious small moment after hilarious small moment, and then suddenly, at least once in the novel, surprises you with some emotional explosion that you just weren't expecting, where you are flooded with compassion, or you can feel how angry the character is that you've been laughing at and with throughout the novel. And that, to me, is the unique power of a Barbara Pym novel. So, A Glass of Blessings. This is from 1958, and I think it might be my favorite up until now. Her debut, Some Tame Gazelle had been my favorite, but this one I think is a strong contender to at least tie with that. So here we have a married protagonist with the unfortunate name, at least from the vantage point of 2017, of Wilmot Forsythe. And she's a married woman. Is she happily married? You'll have to read the novel and decide for yourself, but she's married, no kids. She lives with her agnostic, I believe he's a bureaucrat husband, and he is very agnostic and very witty, tart mother, who's a wonderful character, Sybil, in the novel. Wilmot is a little bit restless, a little bit confused, has trouble adjusting to the changes happening at her church and in society, gender norms, sexual norms, and all of that confusion gets rendered in the most hilarious inner thoughts and small incidents. And I was thoroughly entertained. A Barbara Pym female protagonist is an observer, a sharp observer usually, not always. One of the major things in this plot is that Wilmot can't, and this is a function of how society's changing around her, but she can't realize that a man that she's interested in is actually gay. So that's an interesting plot. But because she's not a spinster, but she fits the other characteristics of a Barbara Pym heroine. She's not beautiful, not anymore. She's not as frumpy and ugly as she thinks she is. She's laughing at the world as much as the reader's laughing at her, and the reader's laughing at the world through her sharp observations. I think I started the thought that I don't know how to finish because I can't remember how I started this long sentence, so I might have to add something in there. But anyway, so Wilmot. The one dramatic moment, and I talked about it on a Friday read, so I don't mind talking about it again, is she's at her best friend's house. She's not with her husband for this overnight visit to her best friend's house, but the four of them, the two couples, have been friends since they were in Italy during the war, I guess the men were in the army and the women were in the Wrens. Barbara Pym was a Wren in World War II. And she's sitting in the living room after dinner watching the telly with her best friend and her husband, and she's close friends with the both of them. Her friend is knitting, not paying attention to what's on TV, and the man reaches over and grabs Wilmot's hand and starts holding it. And this was the most shocking thing I've seen in a Barbara Pym novel yet. And I couldn't believe it. It was so fascinating. And she just wasn't ruffled, she was surprised, but she wasn't offended, and she just kind of rolled off her, and there's kind of a flirtation that goes on between them through the novel. And having a love affair, having an adulterous affair is the theme that's treated very mildly in this novel, and that's how sexual mores were. That was one type of sexual moray that was very much in flux in the late 50s, apparently, and that's one of the things that's explored with wonderful humor and mild drama in this novel. Let me end just by reading some quotes, and I want to talk about adverbs, but I want to just give you a sense of the humor of a Barbara Pym novel. So these two quotes are about ladies that she doesn't much care for, that she has to interact with at church socials and whatnot, and at church. First one. Do you know Mrs. Pollard and Miss Dove and Susan? She indicated the group of chinless, aristocratic-looking ladies I had noticed when I came in. I had a quick foretaste of the sort of conversation we should be making, and said hastily that I must be going home now. Next one. And these are Mary Beamish and her mother are kind of major minor characters in the book. I usually sat in the same pew as Mary Beamish and her mother, but as I made my way towards it, I noticed that there was something not quite right about it. For at the end, nearest the chancel, instead of the bulky shape of old Mrs. Beamish and the drab, self-effacing Mary, I saw only Miss Prideaux and another elderly lady, and beyond them, some distance away, the ex-housekeeper at the clergy house, Mrs. Greenhill. A kind of rustling sound, like dry autumn leaves in the wind, seemed to be coming from the elderly ladies, sitting in their yellowish-brown fur coats, a little upright, as if they were slightly uneasy at being there. I could not at first decide whether the rustling sound came from their natural age and brittleness, or whether they were whispering together about something. Well, that just kills me. That's one of my favorite excerpts in the book. And so in conclusion, I just want to talk about, I never noticed it until this book, so now I want to go back and see, did I miss this in the first 4 novels, or is this something new? But she just slays me with her adverbs. I have never noticed adverbs doing the comedic work that they do in this novel. And it just jumped off the page at me. So in the first excerpt, there's one. I had a quick taste of the sort of conversation we should be making and said hastily that I must be going home now. And just that adverb carries so much comedic weight for me, just makes me giggle. And adverbs are, bad, right? Most writing teachers or writing self-help books say, get rid of your adverbs. But her adverbs really... So here's 2 more. Just listen to the adverbs. In fact, this first one is the very next few lines from the longer quote about the church pew and the rustling brittle ladies. So the very next lines are, as I passed them to get to my seat, Miss Prideaux whispered, Mrs. Beamish and Mary aren't coming tonight. I'm afraid Mrs. Beamish isn't very well. Oh dear, I'm sorry, I whispered back inadequately. So that one, I guess I need to broaden it. It's not just that, it's not always comedic. That one isn't comedic, but it just carries so much weight in showing Wilmot Forsythe in all her inadequacies, in all her lack of self-confidence, and it just... I was struck by it. This one is when she's visiting the house where the priests stay. A former co-worker of her husband's. They helped him get a job as the housekeeper and the cook for these priests. And she and her husband go visit is it called a rectory, I believe, on Boxing Day or something. Mr. Basin is the man they're visiting, the one that her husband's former co-worker. And she just says, do you have many guests? I asked doubtfully. Now that just kills me. Yeah, rectories, they don't have many guests. This could all be in my own head, but I love a Barbara Pym adverb. So, if you respond on any level to what I've said, please check out Barbara Pym. I love her. She's not everyone's cup of tea. Have you read her? I suggest starting with Some Tame Gazelle, Excellent Women, or this one, but this one might just be my favorite. So that's my review of A Glass of Blessings. Thanks for watching.